Hello darkness, my old friend, I've come to talk with you again, because a vision softly creeping left its seeds while I was sleeping, and the vision that was planted in my brain still remains within the sound of silence. In restless dreams I walked alone, narrow streets of cobblestone, neath the halo of a street lamp, turned my collar to the cold and damp, when my eyes were stabbed by the flash of a neon light, split the night and touched the sound of silence. Fool said I do not know, silence like a cancer grows. Hear my words that I might teach you, take my arms that I might reach you, but my words like silent raindrops fell and echoed in the wells of silence.
In this industry, and I think that's shameful. And I don't know about you, but to watch Joe Ludwig, the minister, again interviewed after the expose on the 7:30 report, and to watch him to continue to defend this industry and to claim that the system works, and to smile and say that 99.9% of animals exported are treated humanely, made me absolutely sick to my stomach. We hear that should a coalition government come into office in September, Julie Bishop will be apologising to the Indonesians for the suspension of trade after the horrific images of the expose in 2011 of cattle being brutalised in the abattoirs over there. So they're going to apologise for that. That's what Tony Abbott wants. He wants us to apologise. And he also wants to expand the trade. So we're here today because we're people who care about these animals. And this is the overwhelming wish of the Australian public is to have this banned. Kenazov. He's a veterinary surgeon and shipmaster. He's been a vet on many live export ships. And he put in a submission to the Farmer Review back in June 2011. It's a very interesting submission. He concludes, there comes a time when one has to draw a line in the sand and decide whether the incentives to continue, money, promotion, political gain or whatever, are really worth it. And that comes from a vet, a live export vet. So that's enough from me. We've got some wonderful speakers here today. And just before we start with the speakers, I just want to make a special mention that we also are very lucky to have Phil Wallen with us today. He flew in for us. So I'm sure you all know who Phil Wallen is, but if not, Google him and watch him on YouTube doing his stuff. It's amazing. He's an incredibly good and kind man.
If Minister Ludwig was here today, I would ask him this question. What did you feel when you saw the images of Australian cattle being subjected to horrific acts of brutality in Egypt? We have seen no emotion from any of our politicians. We have witnessed no empathy. Yet Australians everywhere are deeply ashamed of our politicians for allowing this trade in animal suffering to continue. As a nation, we have witnessed the brutal treatment and torture of our animals in almost every country in which we export them. The major political parties continue to ignore the well-informed opinion of the majority of Australians. and actively promote and support this brutal industry. You have been vocal in your tens of thousands in demanding that live export end. You have done everything in your power to give voice to our animal friends. Almost. In September this year, for the first time in our history, you will have the opportunity to cast your vote for a political party that is solely dedicated to improving the welfare of animals. That party is the Animal Justice Party. Our sole focus is to put an end to all forms of animal cruelty, whether that is live export, intensive factory farming, or the destruction of our native animals. The latest examples of sickening cruelty in Egypt show that Minister Ludwig has lost all control over what happens once the animals leave our shores. It is time Minister Ludwig resigned. Showing heartless disregard for both the animals and the electorate, the opposition leader, Mr Abbott, promises to expand the live export industry and apologise for suspending it. The major parties have had ample opportunity to put the well-being of animals first instead of going cap in hand to a ruthless industry that places profits before anything else. Sally Sutton and I, Senate candidates for the Animal Justice Party, are clear about the party's commitment to ending the live export trade. The hundreds of thousands of Australians who have demanded an end to this cruel, greed-driven trade, and the thousands who have stood with us at rallies now have real hope that animals will finally get a voice in Canberra. If the government will not get rid of live export, the people will get rid of the government. With 4 months to go until the federal election, we need your help. Get on board a political party that is dedicated to addressing the biggest social justice issue of our time, that is, animal justice. The AJP will be fielding 10 Senate candidates in the federal election across South Australia, New South Wales, Victoria, Western Australia and the ACT. All other political parties are now on notice. The AJP is here and we're not going away anytime soon. Woohoo! Ignore the welfare of our animal friends and you will lose votes. Thank you.
Can I just start off by saying 6 months ago we stood on the steps of Parliament House united in one voice with one message. And I think all of us remember that day where a few thousand people turned out for this very important issue. There's been no other issue in Australian politics over the last few years that's united Australians such as this issue, the live animal export issue. Back then, 6 months ago, we spoke of the horrors that we'd seen on our TVs, on the 7:30 reports, on the late lines, on the reports that were coming from overseas, from Indonesia, about the cruelty and the disgusting treatment of our animals. Today we're here again to talk about those disgusting images that we saw from the Egyptian abattoirs a few days ago. So I'm asking myself and I'm asking everyone, what's changed in that time? Nothing. We're continuing to see these horrible, horrible images. We're continuing to hear of stories coming out of places where animals are being ill-treated and treated dreadfully. What I say to myself and to all of you and to all the Australian public is that we have a system that currently isn't working. And the reality is, as long as we have live exports and we're sending animals overseas, it will never work. It will never work. The only way to make it work is by banning live exports. I've been quite clear on this in my own political party forums, within my caucus, within the media, that there is only one way to end this tragic, disgusting trade, and that is to ban live exports. Not to expand it, not to look at different ways of doing it, but ban it. And I know that there are other candidates here and people from the Greens and the other candidates that spoke earlier, and myself, that will be doing all that we can through the forums that we have at our hands to be able to get that message through. But we need your help and your assistance. We need you to let your MPs know exactly how you feel. We need you to let them know that you won't be voting for them unless they stand up on this issue. And I'm not trying to be political here, but this is an absolutely disgusting trade that has to stop and end. And as I said, there's been no other issue that's united the Australian public like this issue. There has been absolutely no other issue, and we know how divided politics is at the moment.
A famous song about a captain of a ship who transported slaves, many of you may know. Its first line goes, "I once was lost, but now I see." All of you here today see. The challenge we all have is to empower those around us to see what we see. I believe in the power of others who are not yet aware that they hold the power to change. This is what we are about here today. We're about changing the idea that it is acceptable to transport living creatures on the high seas with no regard to their well-being. Believe it or not, we once transported other human beings in chains on ships too. Yet by people standing up, people like you and me, here today, people saying enough, by refusing to accept that this is tolerable, that this is okay, eventually change is made possible. And in hindsight, those around us who now see wonder why we ever did it in the first place. Enlivening change is difficult. It takes time. And when you mention the word economy, no one likes change. To change people's thinking, you will frequently hear that banning live export is bad for the economy. Time and time again, we hear this rhetoric rolled out. It is a hollow argument. Live animal exports makes up a very small percentage of the actual Australian export market. The live export market is not the linchpin of our economy. The benefits of banning the trade of live animals far outweigh any small impact on our economy. A ban of live animal exports benefits the animals as well as Australian workers. We can talk about the economics of the live export trade, but this is a moral argument. I believe there is a broad consensus in our community that the live export of animals is morally wrong. However, until the frontier of this movement, that is everybody here today, can genuinely empower the wider population and to make the lawmakers of this land accountable at the ballot box, the frontier of banning live export of Australian animals won't shift. But we are moving forward. More and more people are listening. More and more people are saying enough. And the numbers here today tell that story. This is our charter. This is our change as messengers of this moral story. Talk to people you know about banning live animal export. Talk to people who won't listen. Talk to your friends, your siblings, your parents, your grandparents, your co-workers, your neighbours, people at the checkout, people in your local shops. Evoke change, and evoke change in your community. Empower others to build the legacy animals of this country deserve. And be patient. Be patient with people. Understand that it takes time for people to see. Take the time to explain things to them, but take action. Spread the word. Continue to write to your local members of parliament. Continue to petition for change, but importantly, petition those around you to also advocate for change. Live exports is bad animal welfare. We should protect animals as individuals, as they are. We should acknowledge the dignity of living creatures. Animal welfare legislation in Australia should provide these protections. Yeah. We cannot wait for the government to come to these changes themselves. It is so very important that the animal's intrinsic value is considered. Animal welfare should be on the agenda, and the louder our voices are, the greater urge we create to keep live animal exports at the forefront of our leaders' minds. In 1994, South Australia was the first state to give women the right to vote. We were not afraid to show leadership then, and we are not afraid to show leadership now. There is no reason why we cannot be the first to stop live exports from our port, to stop exporting animals from Port Adelaide. Let's all commit today. Let's all commit today to taking it up a gear. Let's all commit to reaching out to as many people as possible. Encourage them to look deep into their soul and ask themselves if animals should be forced into these horrific circumstances. believe in their power to say no.
I'm just going to quickly acknowledge that I'm standing here on Ghana land today and acknowledge the power of you to be here within a couple of days of the last horrific outrage on our TV screens that is happening because we have not yet banned live exports. We all know that on Monday night we saw yet again in Egypt the exposure of this horrific trade. We all know that when we hear the words that there will be a report done on this, but 6 months ago we were told that there'd be a report done on Pakistan. Where is it? We have yet to see that. These are hollow words. These are words we will not accept from our government until they ban live exports. But in Egypt, we've banned live exports before because of these practices, where we know that they've been exposed before. In 2006, we stopped live exports to Egypt. 7 years later, we're seeing the same situation. But you know, 7 years ago, when we banned live exports to Egypt, our chilled meat exports tripled. So there was no hit to the economy. It increased Australian jobs. It improved animal welfare standards. It was a win-win. We can do that again. So Ludwig, as everyone has said here, should be ashamed of himself, but I do commend Steve Georgianis, the member for Hindmarsh, a Labor member of the government, for being here. It's not the first time he's been here. He's continually spoken out. I thank Sarah Hanson-Young, our Senator for the Greens, who's here. I can see the Port Adelaide Greens over there. I commend the Animal Justice Party for standing up. So we've got politicians, we've got philanthropists, but most importantly, we've got people. Now, we've got a few hundred here just a few days after the last outrage. We know that we've had tens of thousands in the streets. We know that we've had hundreds of thousands who believe that we need to ban live exports. At the ballot box, those hundreds of thousands need to be turned into the millions to let their local MP know that you don't ban if you have live exports, no ban, no vote. Make it loud and clear. You've got 4 months. September 14th, we all know when the election will be. You've got 4 months to get in the ears, as other speakers have said, of your friends, your family. Educate them. Let them know that this isn't some crazy idea. This actually has a lot of merit, not only on animal welfare standards. If they don't believe the animal welfare arguments, you can start with other arguments. You can start with the economic arguments. Live exports is less than 1/3 of 1% of our entire export industry. And you know what? It could be much greater if we switch to chilled. Whatever arguments you have, I really commend Animals Australia for their work on this, and all of the groups. But Animals Australia, a charity, an NGO, has consistently exposed the cruelty. It hasn't been our government has failed us. It hasn't been the industry has failed itself. The industry is kowtowing, not to use a pun, but kowtowing to a small proportion of people who want a quick buck. And they do it. They sacrifice animal welfare to do it, and they sacrifice the jobs, and they sacrifice the sustainability of their own industry. It's a short-term measure for them, which puts money in the pockets of only a few people. That does not benefit us in the long run, and it certainly doesn't benefit the animals, as we know. Those politicians who are standing up for the animals in our parliament, minor in number, unfortunately, but we will continue to be vocal. And what I will say is that the Greens have a 5-point plan that we will be taking to the Parliament in coming weeks. We've only got a few sitting weeks before the September 14th election, but our animal welfare spokesperson, and I've got to say, the Greens are the only parliamentary party to have an animal welfare spokesperson, has announced a 5-point plan. That the Gillard government, while they did make a start on this, it was a false start. It was a start that wasn't well thought through. The Greens have got a 5-point plan. We'll be putting it to the test in the Senate and the House of Reps in coming weeks. We need your support. And for those here who are the people power, know that you are just here representing thousands of others. So know that your voice is strong, your voice is the majority. We will not be the silent majority any longer on this issue. Thank you.
I just wanted to share a little bit of good news and something that demonstrates why we have to continue to write letters. We got people to sign letters to their councils asking their local councils to support a ban on live export. Well, we've just recently received a letter from Unley Council, and I'll read it for you, for taking the time to send me your letters outlining your concerns about live export from South Australian ports. I also share the same view, and we look at what Port Adelaide Council has adopted. Another councillor has raised this issue at our council meeting, and we will endeavour to potentially implement the same stance. The other thing, please support the petition around the Independent Animal Welfare Office. We really need that office up and running before September. It is vital that DAF stop being the overseer of this trade because they have proven their incompetence.
You again. Because a vision softly creeping left its seeds while I was sleeping, and the vision that was planted in my brain still remains within the sound of silence. In restless dreams I walked alone, narrow streets of cobblestone, neath the halo of a street lamp, turn my collar to the cold and damp, when my eyes were stabbed by the flash of a neon light, split the night, touch the sound of silence. Fool said I do not know. Silence like a cancer grows. Hear my words that I might teach you. Take my arms that I might reach you. But my words like silence